Hi, everyone. This is Dr. Carrie Horn, author of A Soul Aligned, How God Heals His Creations, and Heart Known Series Workbook, a practical application workbook for biblical healing. In this video, I'm going to be talking with you about why it's so important to work within the design that God has given us in order to heal. And the first thing I want to share with you is my process, how God works with me before I do a video. I have to do this work first. The work that I talk about with you, every message that I share with you, God builds it in me first by me doing my own work with Him. If I'm not accountable for that, if I get on and I start recording a video, even on a topic that God has told me, here's what you're going to talk about today, but I don't let Him build that in me first, I don't receive His ministry first, I will end up doing that video in my carnality. I'll end up doing that video in a wise, in my own eyes kind of way. There are a couple problems with that. One problem is that it's probably going to be sort of shallow and superficial. It's not going to give you the depth, and the Holy Spirit is not going to testify to it because I separated from the vine. And part of the process that has to happen with God building something in me, building a message in me, and ministering to me first, is that by receiving God's ministry and letting Him work within me, I become transformed through the renewing of my mind. So it's not that God has given us a brain and He doesn't expect for us to use it. It's just not the powerhouse that the world tells us it is. God knows how to discipline the mind according to Him by receiving His ministry, by conforming ourselves to what He is saying to us, what He is calling us in to address. Now, I want to remind you that we are commanded to be disciplined in the physical flesh. That includes the brain. The brain cannot heal itself. The brain can't even discipline itself because the brain, being part of the undisciplined physical flesh, has desires for self-glory, self-reliance. It is vulnerable to the sinful flesh. So we actually have to prioritize our heart. We have to have a true desire and true motives for God's will. We have to wake up conforming ourselves to what He has commanded of us, to how He has designed us. However, us being in this physical flesh, being affected by the sinful flesh, every day we wake up and the physical flesh wants to take over, doesn't it? Every day our physical flesh gets inflamed and activated and has its own ideas of what it wants to do today, the ministry that it wants to take over. And so we have to be really careful because my flesh also wants to take over this ministry, but God has taught me otherwise. And He has afflicted me in order to stay very weak. I've shared with you in other videos that one of the things that He has afflicted me with is a cough. I have this cough, and He uses that cough to slow me down. I can't keep talking. I have to pause, I have to cough, and then I have to gather myself, take a drink of water. So He slows down my process. Otherwise, I would just speed up and keep going. It is annoying as all get out. But here's what I want to tell you. Remember that Paul prayed 3 times for his thorn to be removed? And do you remember that God said that in His weakness, God was made strong? So God uses this affliction, this thorn, in order to keep me slowed down. He knows what's good. He knows how to discipline me. He knows what is needed in order to keep the flesh from trying to rise up. He knows what is needed in order to keep the flesh in its place from trying to interfere with the message and take the reins. There are indeed some things that we don't have the ability to do. We are required it doesn't absolve us of responsibility. We are required to participate in disciplining the flesh. We are required to choose God and to conform to his will and to let us use us however he's going to use us. So knowing that he uses this cough in order to pull me back in so that I'm not running on my own thoughts or my own message, when I start coughing a lot, then I have to look and say, okay, he's slowing me down. If I don't slow me down, he's going to slow me down. He doesn't give grief willingly. Now, that's a very different way of looking at things from how we've looked at them, how we have been taught in the world, right? Usually we would say, oh, I'm coughing a lot today. I must have some allergies. And we come up with all of these ideas about why it is that we're coughing. But I know why I cough, and I know how to slow it down. I know how to alleviate the grief that is being used in order to discipline me. I slow down. And when I have recognized what God is doing and I have responded, then he relents, right? He relents. When I return to him and I conform to him rather than what I think I'm talking about today, then he relents. These are things that should be happening inside of us if we are being moved by his Spirit. These are the ways that God disciplines us and causes us to follow his laws and be careful to keep his decrees. Now, on the other side of that, the enemy has planted a lot of distraction and false information in the world. False information, just as I mentioned to you, that there are other explanations for what is going on inside of our design, the design that God gave us. But God told us very clearly that he does not give grief willingly. So if we have some sort of an affliction, his will is not for us to go and try to make it go away. His will is for us to return to him, and he will make it go away when we learn the reason why he sent it, when we pay attention to our design. The design that, by the way, he established in order to communicate with us. So the enemy has many different tactics and schemes in order to deceive us, and also in order to activate us so that we cannot get still, so that we are sped up in the flesh, inflamed, activated, and we're not able to hear or feel God. So God uses certain things like my cough in order to communicate with me that I need to slow down, that I need to reconnect with him. Even as I'm talking, that I need to stay close to him, stay in him, and get still. He will share the message through me and through the design that he has given me. So that transformation by the renewing of my mind happens first by me making a decision in my heart that I'm going to conform to God. When I get up in the morning, I've got to make that decision, even while the flesh is trying to pull me away, while the flesh is trying to tell me all these good ideas it has. I absolutely have to sit down with him first, and I've got to start journaling whatever's going on with me today in order to discipline the flesh, bring the flesh down. So when I sit down, what I do is I start writing out from the inner child and inner parent template that I have taught you to do in Heart Known series and A Soul Aligned. Again, remember, not as the world does it, but as we do it based on biblical principles. And I begin writing about what it is that I'm feeling this morning. Has God raised any dreams? Is there anything going on inside of my body? Am I feeling any sensations? This is the design that God has given us. And you can see this, it's well documented in the Bible. He communicates to us through our bodies. He communicates through our feelings. He communicates through our dreams. He raises themes and memories and circumstances in order to build us, in order to communicate with his people. He even begins harming the earth, sending wasting disease. These are things that God sends. He is sovereign over everything. Our job and our responsibility is to look at those things, to pay attention to them, to be attuned to what he is bringing up. That requires attunement to ourselves, to our bodies, our feelings, our memories, our circumstances, understanding, recognizing what he's raising, what is the picture that he's weaving together in order to communicate with his own creation. So now I want to help you understand what my process is right now, because this is how, once I am in position, once I have become transformed by the renewing of my mind according to God, according to the decision and the work that I've done in my heart where God's presence is. I've told you before that I don't prepare any kind of a lesson or anything like that. I know when God says, now it's time to do the video. He prepares me. I receive that preparation through his ministry. And then he says, now it's time to do the video. Now open your mouth. So I really don't know what it is that I'm going to talk about necessarily. There's not an organized lesson plan. But here's what happens is I speak, and then I pause the video. And then I speak again, and then I pause the video. And so I'm staying attuned to God's Spirit. Where does he want me to go now? And because he's already built that in me, he is speaking into the repertoire that he's already built. Now talk about this. So this is the relationship we're supposed to have with him. He ministers to us, then he ministers through us. And staying connected to him as the vine and the branch, him as the vine, us as the branch, he's moving us. He's moving me right now. He is functioning in the way that my notes, I guess, would function, right? If I had some sort of an organized lesson plan. But it's different because this is his ministry. My ministry would have a list of notes. His ministry tells me, here's the next thing you're going to talk about. Because he's the only one who knows how he's going to do this thing, how he's going to use the tools that he has made, how he's going to use us for the purpose for which he set us apart. So even my body posture right now knows, my body knows, even the way that I'm sitting, knows that I am poured out to him, knows that it must be broken and conformed according to him. Not about me, it's about him. There are 4 ways that God worked with me this morning. One was sensations in my body. One was what I was feeling. One was circumstances. And the other was the dream that he gave me last night. We have to pay attention to every single thing that God is raising and receive that. Otherwise, as I've said before, his voice is going to get louder. He doesn't give grief willingly, but if we're not listening and we don't understand the design that he has given us, he's going to get louder. Our symptoms are going to get louder, right? Even though our symptoms are not a symptom of some sort of thing or condition that the world needs to treat, these are things that God is sending to his own creation in order to communicate with us. And we often treat things, circumstances in our lives, as though they are things that, like a checklist item that we just need to get through. But there's nothing in your life, not even the smallest annoyance to the biggest blowout, that God has not raised in order to build you. So I had a circumstance last night. I had somewhat of an argument with someone I love. And even though it was resolved with them, I still have some work to do on me this morning. Then there was a circumstance that was raised this morning that was an annoyance to me. I've got some work to do on that. Because if I ignore what God is sending, it's going to turn into a bigger thing. If his will is for me to be built, I'm going to be built. But the degree to which I experience grief in that building process is largely going to be determined by how quickly I actually acknowledge him and respond. I had some physical sensations that largely go along with having gotten COVID a couple nights ago. But that does not mean that God is not sovereign in that. That does not mean that God has not given me COVID, and that every time that I'm doing this body metaphor work, that I'm paying attention to what he's raising in my body. It doesn't mean that he's not sovereign over that. It also doesn't mean that the devil has sent it. The devil didn't send me COVID. God sent COVID because he has a plan of how he's going to use it. And I've told you in some other videos that my kids and I have fasted and prayed for people that who we were concerned about. And those people got COVID. And one of the people that I prayed for went to the hospital 3 times for something else that God sent. And when that happened, when those people got COVID, when that person went to the hospital, we knew exactly what God was doing. We knew that there was a direct correlation with us praying for those people. They'd already been reproved. They were not listening, and God brought them low. Likewise, when God is reproving us or he's calling us in and we're not listening, he's going to bring us lower. Now, that's not the only reason why God will send something like this. So I'm going to give you some other examples. I had prayed for my children to understand some of the things that God has revealed to me regarding illness or affliction and why he sends these things and how to understand. And I prayed that prayer, and no sooner did I pray that prayer did they get COVID. I got a text message the very next morning that both of them had COVID. And I shared with them, I prayed this prayer, listen to God, do the body metaphor work that I've talked with you about, listen to what he's saying. And so we talked about it, a couple days later. They really did not, they probably had symptoms for about 2 days. I think my daughter had, the bad symptoms for about 1 day. It was very difficult for them to see bright light. And so they weren't able to watch television. And someone had recently gifted them a very large television. And so they had been watching a lot of TV, things like, Prince of Egypt or something like that. They love that movie. Nevertheless, that was the thing that God began talking with them about is you can't be distracting yourself like this. You can't be watching this much TV. We're supposed to be inhabited by his voice, not by someone else's voice. And when we're watching TV, we're inhabited by somebody else's voice. We're not actively engaging and relating with God's Spirit. So though it may seem innocuous, it is not the way that we have been designed. So my daughter said to me, well, he hasn't really talked with me about illness, but here's what he's talked to me about. And I started laughing and I said, well, yeah, he's not talking with you directly about illness or your design. He's actually proving to you that he will use illness in order to call you in and teach you what he wants to teach you. He will use your design. He will use whatever he afflicts you with, whatever it is that he sends, his circumstances, whatever it is, in order to build you. Our job is to pay attention to what he's weaving together. And none of us are vaccinated. We do not bow down to the science god or the government god that tells us that we have to get vaccinated. That's not a thing in our family. We know that God is our healer. We trust that God can and will heal us, but that if he doesn't, then it wasn't his will. He's in charge of whether we live or die. Just like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego said, look, we're not going to bow down to your God, King Nebuchadnezzar. We know you're going to throw us into the furnace, but we also know that God's in control, that he has the power and ability to save us, and that if he doesn't, we're still not going to bow down to your God. And what happened? King Nebuchadnezzar ordered the furnace to be, 10 times hotter? That even the guards that were outside of the furnace died, burned, but the 3 men who would not bow down to that false god, who trusted in the sovereignty of their God, and they were put into that furnace, not a hair on them was singed, that the glory of God might be revealed, and King Nebuchadnezzar would acknowledge that their God was real. And I have to tell you that us knowing that and acknowledging and standing up for that, despite what our friends might say or the world might say, it doesn't matter. We're not going to bow down. The kids got COVID for, I told you, 2 days. He had it for 2 days. She had it for 1. All of their vaccinated friends got really bad cases of COVID. I got it 2 days ago. I had really bad, I wouldn't even say really bad. I've had worse for flu-like symptoms. I had aching in my bones, mostly in my joints, but it wasn't intolerable. Nothing that a heat pad couldn't give me a little comfort while I slept. In the morning, I had a pretty bad headache. And when I stood, I've kind of felt like I was, like floating, like I could pass out. Sore throat, coughing, tightness in my chest. But the symptoms, I have to tell you, were so minimal, just enough to let me know I had something. And every single time that I sat down and did body metaphor work, that I sat down and listened to what he was raising in my body, I let him deal with me. I received his ministry on whatever he was talking with me about, and the symptoms remitted. Like he says, he doesn't give grief willingly. So if we truly believe in him, we're going to believe in what he has said, and we're going to obey it. You know, a lot of people talking about believing in God, but they don't live this way. They don't live in accordance with who he has said he is and what he has said to do. They just believe with their carnality. They think that they believe, but they're not living that out. And I have to tell you, I'm not afraid for 1 minute that God is going to take my life or take the lives of my children. I'm not afraid of that, because I know that if we die, that is what he has chosen to do. That is the point at which we're supposed to die. We're not supposed to be afraid of death, physical death. We're supposed to be afraid of spiritual death. We're not supposed to fear those who kill the body. We're supposed to fear the one who kills both body and soul in hell. So we're not going to bow down to those who kill the body, because our God has the power to deliver us from the furnace. And if he chooses not to, we still won't bow down. So even though yesterday I was having some trouble breathing while I was doing one of the videos anyway, I had to pause it several times because my chest was tight and I was coughing and stuff like that. But these last few days, you can see that I have not stopped posting videos every single day. I'm not wiped out from this. God has given me exactly what I need in order to do his will, in order to continue in the ministry that he started in me. And he has used whatever symptoms he has raised, or if he intensifies a symptom, then I know to sit down and deal with it. And then it remits. Now, let me talk about how to do that for a minute. But I want you to know that you have to do the work. This is something that you have to do in order to understand, in order for God to reveal. You can't just listen to what I'm saying about what I do in a day and get it. You have to experience, because God wants to relate with you. He wants to reveal his glory to you directly. So you're not going to fully understand just intellectually or from listening to me talk about it, what God actually does with his creations. You have to experience that. What I recommend is that if this is something that you are interested in understanding and learning, which everyone should be, because that is the design he has given us, and that's the only way we're going to heal. You can get the Heart Known Series workbook, and that will help you to get started. Now, I'm not concerned about getting rich off of my books. My concern is for God's people to know how to heal, to know the truth about how to heal based on his word. So there is a large portion of that book that you can receive for free. You can start reading that book already for free before you decide that you want to make a purchase. There are a couple links on my channel, one to A Soul Aligned, which is the main, the main text. And that explains how God heals us, how he designed us for his plan of salvation in order for us to fulfill our part of the covenant with him, how he has designed us to heal in him, how that relates to the times we're living in. It is a very large book. Don't be intimidated by that. You don't have to read the entire book. It's not like you're not going to get any healing along the way and you have to read the whole book in order to get healing. It builds, the concepts build. Now in Heart Known, the other link is for Heart Known series, and that is a workbook to help you to practically apply what God has taught us. On those links, you can go onto the Amazon website and click the Kindle option, and then double click the icon, the picture of the book. And when you click onto that, you'll get a large part of the book for free. So you don't even have to purchase the book until you've tried it out. It really can't get any easier than that. And that book is going to teach you how to resolve your unresolved issues and receive his ministry in order to build you. That's why he sent those things, those experiences, is in order to build you according to his will. It's going to teach you how God speaks to us through our feelings and calls us in to deal with the spiritual and emotional dilemmas that he raises inside of us, again, in order to build us for his will. It's going to talk with you about how to do body metaphor work, how God is speaking to you about spiritual and emotional dilemmas that he's raising in your body, again, in order to build you. In all these cases, you have to return to him in order to understand. There's no way to understand what God alone has sent without relating with God. There's no way to understand your design that the Creator gave you without relating with the Creator. It will also help you to understand how to understand your dreams, the dreams that God raises. I had a dream last night that God was working on me through. Now, here's something that I want you to understand and consider, is that these are all things that the field of mental health has talked about. They've addressed physical stuff. They've addressed like chronic illness. They've addressed feelings. They've addressed thoughts. They've addressed memories and dreams. But I want you to understand that the devil has worked through that in order to distort your design and distract from the design that God has given you, in order to speak to you, in order to call you in. And that when we are going to a human so-called expert to tell us what our dreams mean, to tell us what's going on inside of our bodies, to tell us how to relate with our feelings, or how to not acknowledge our feelings at all because they're not important, to tell us about the design that God has given us, even though they don't acknowledge that God has given it to us, but to tell us, to educate us about our design, we are placing that person in the position of God. Only God can tell us about our design, which he has done in his word. The teachings in those books that I have written are not my own teachings. They are a consolidation of what God has written in his own word, what he has told us about how he has designed us and what he requires of us. That's all I'm doing. I am not an expert. God is the only expert. I am a shepherd back to his word, back to his spirit. Paul, when he was instructing the church, he was not an expert, was he? He never claimed to be an expert. He never taught anything that was his own teaching. He taught based on God's word. That's what I do. That's it. There is plenty of work for me to do within the church without having to go off on my own spin and my own ideas to make a name for myself. That's not what I'm about. It's not what I do. God he spoke in parables, he spoke in metaphors, he helped us to understand spiritual things through tangible symbolism. If he did it then, he hasn't stopped doing it. That's his pattern. And we need to understand and recognize the pattern of God, and then we'll be able to understand how he speaks. He does that as well with the symptoms that he raises within our bodies, the sensations that he raises within our bodies. So as we become aware of those, we list them out, and then we begin to describe them, staying close to the Holy Spirit, letting the Holy Spirit remind us of memories and sensations and other things that he has raised to the surface, the picture that he is weaving together. I've said to you before that when we understand the truth, we're going to understand how to heal. If we understand the truth that God does this, if we understand the truth that he has designed and created us, that he has spoken into these things, that he has used the body so many times in Scripture to illustrate a point, a spiritual understanding. If we actually believe that, it should not be so far-fetched to understand that he continues to do that, and that we have a counselor inside of us. We don't need human counselors. We have the counselor inside of us to minister to us and help us understand what he's speaking. And so as we begin to describe what it is that we're feeling in our bodies, the metaphors, the parables that he is speaking into his design are going to come out, and he's going to testify to what he is calling us in to address. Now, that's not enough to heal, is it? All that's telling us is what we need to address. Now we need to know how. And so the work that I teach is inner child, inner parent work based on biblical principles. I'm not going to get into the understanding of it in this video because that would make this too long of a video. I talk about it in many videos. I talk about it throughout the books, and I talk about it in the beginning of Heart Known series. While inner child and inner parent is not in the Bible, the way that we do it is based on biblical principles. So that is what I teach, and that is where relief and some of the resolution is going to come from. That is our part. That's our personal accountability. And then the other part of our personal accountability is conforming to God, conforming to his spirit, now receiving the ministry that he has, that he wants to teach us about why it is that he sent that thing. We have to work within the design that God has given us. We have to conform to his heart. We have to obey his will and submit to him, and then he alone will heal us. No human expert can do that. We do not heal ourselves. Our brain does not heal us. None of the lies that we've been taught in the world are doing the job. Otherwise, they wouldn't keep coming up with new therapies and new treatments. Haven't we given this a good run already with the sciences? It's time to start doing something new. It's time to return to God. He told us from the very beginning that he would heal us. If we obeyed him, he would heal us. And the sciences like to claim that there's less illness and we're so evolved, there's so much technology. Why is illness increasing then? Illness has not decreased. Illness has increased. Mental illness has increased. We keep believing this baloney that the sciences tell us about what they're doing. But if you look just at your lifetime, has illness increased or decreased just in your lifetime? Has mental illness increased or decreased just in your lifetime? Why then would we believe in this research that tells us that they're really getting a handle on this? Give us more money. Give us more money for more research to lie to you. It's not working. And the reason it's not working is because God has said, I am the Lord who heals you. And he has also said, I do not yield my glory or praise to idols. And then again, return to me and I will heal you. I hope that this has given you some sort of motivation to look at things from a different perspective. Look at things not just from a different perspective, but from the perspective of the one who created us. That's what I'm speaking on. The perspective of the one who created us. If you were making a creation and you wanted that creation to be close to you, to return to you, to know that you are the only one who can protect and save them, would you then not design them to that end so that every part of their design would cause them to return to you, to receive you, to submit to you, to rely on you? Would you then not send certain things to them so that they didn't stray, causing them to experience consequences when they stepped outside of the parameters of your protection? When they started choosing things that actually wanted to steal, kill, and destroy them? And if your heart was such that you wanted your creation to make that choice, you didn't want to force them to make that choice, you wanted them to choose you, would you not create situations so that they understood and became aware of the dangers in what they were choosing? If you had established rules with them and said, look, I'm sovereign over all of this. I send all these things. I do all of this. I'm the one who sends wasting disease. I'm the one who made your body. I'm the one who can kill your body. I'm the one who can harm your body. So if I start sending things like wasting disease, or if I start harming this earth that I made, this place that you're living in, then recognize that I'm doing that and that I'm saying, return to me and I will heal you. I'll heal your body. I'll heal the place you're living in. I'll restore you. I'll take care of you. I will love you. But you have to choose me. That's what God has done with us. That's the heart of our God. He wants us to really choose him and really believe in him to the point that we're not going to bow down to anything else. We're not going to seek a solution anywhere else but in him. We're not going to trust anything else to heal us, to pay our bills, to tell us truth. He's it. He's enough. In fact, he's more than enough. Absolutely nothing else that we could possibly put our trust or faith in is anything at all. That's what he says. They're all nothing. None of those gods have foretold what he's about to bring. None of those gods have mouths to speak or eyes to see. And that's what we're putting our faith in. And so he says, return. When I start sending these things, return to me, and I'll be the one who heals you. I'm the only one who can heal you. I hope this video has been helpful and shifted your perspective to the truth of what God has established with his own creations. Thank you for listening. God bless you, and I'll see you in the next video.